Welcome to the first episode of the Desirable podcast. So if you've watched a few other episodes, you know that this isn't technically the first episode, but we're doing a revamp. So I've put all the videos on private because they don't represent exactly what I want to do with the Desirable podcast. On December 15th, 2024, I gave my life to Jesus Christ, and ever since then, my entire perspective on the world has changed. And as a result, I don't feel authentic. And if you guys have watched any of the last episodes, you'd know that my number one thing is authenticity. And I just want to stay authentic, give you guys the most value that I possibly can. So now I'm going to be shifting the concept. It's still going to be on Desirable, except now my catchphrase is that I'm just a regular guy seeking biblical wisdom to become more desirable. So throughout the Desirable podcast, what we're going to be doing from now on is we're going to be using the Bible and lessons from Christianity on how to improve our lives and how we can become more desirable. I'm just recent. It's March right now. I'm just new to the faith. So I'm going to be sharing my own experiences, but I'm also going to be bringing people on to sort of learn from them, and then I can bring you guys along with me so you guys can learn along with me. So yeah, I thought that's the way I'm going to structure it. I'm not claiming to be a pro. I'm not claiming to know everything. There might be times in this podcast where I'm going to slip up, but I feel really called to be making this podcast, and I'm going to keep doing regular episodes. I'm going to aim for weekly episodes. It might be stuff where I just break down scripture. It might be stuff which I've learned. I might be bringing people on who have been in the faith for a while, people who have interesting stories. But yeah, that's the basic gist. For this specific video, I thought I'd start at the start. Like, if you guys know me, you're probably thinking, what? Jack? Jesus Christ? What is this? This just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you guys knew me and who I was and who I used to be, this is, yeah, it's not anything I expected for myself. I'm shocked as well. But yeah, this is basically going to be my testimony and how I came to the faith and how my whole world got shifted upside down. My whole life has completely changed, and I'm going to start the very start. I've made a few TikToks here and there, but I haven't sat down and properly recorded my entire testimony from start to finish. So throughout this episode, we're going to be covering a few key topics. Some of the main ones that I'm going to cover, which because they relate to me and my story, is meditation. I was heavy on meditation, astral projection, going into the spirit realm illegally. We'll touch on that, but I was big on meditation and all that new age stuff. Breaking free from the hub, breaking free from that addiction. I don't know if I could say it because I'll get monetized. I'll get demonetized, even though this isn't even monetized anyway right now. But yeah, breaking free from the spirit of lust and those addictions which started when I was younger and I wasn't able to break free from until I came to Jesus. All the signs which I got from God leading up to this, back in the day, I was calling it the universe. The universe is speaking to me, bro. The universe. But no, it was God. I'm sorry, God, for saying that it was the universe. Then here's the juicy part. So I actually got demons casted out of me. This was the most eye-opening experience of my life. It was surreal. Before this, I kind of knew the spirit realm existed. I could see into it and stuff, but I thought it was just in my head. But when this happened, I was full manifesting. I'll tell you guys a story throughout this episode, but I was full manifesting. I had demons. I was like in the exorcism or something. It was like that literally happened to me. It was surreal. Then yeah, I'll touch on that. And then I'm going to finish this episode off with what I've learned through all of this, like my biggest takeaways, so to speak. But yeah, without further ado, I guess I'm going to start at the start. So this all started when I was really young, and I'm going to start where my curiosity for the spirit realm started. It started with my granddad. We called him Titi. Titi ended up passing away, and then Titi always wanted to get his ashes buried at this one particular beach. I don't know, he loved this beach. So we got our whole family together. There's like 20, 30 of us, big Spanish family. And on this day, I remember we were playing on the beach for a little while, and then we all gathered to watch my brother and my uncle scatter the ashes at nighttime in the sunset. I didn't really know anything about it. I was just a kid. I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff. But as they started pouring the ashes into the water, then out of nowhere, a flock of doves, not seagulls, doves just started flying by directly where we were dumping the ashes. And I was like, everyone was in shock. We're like, what? This is so trippy. And they just kept coming. I don't even know where these doves came from. It was surreal. And then the thing that was crazy is everyone got to pull out their phones to record. Everybody's phone was glitching. Nobody could film it. Or if people who filmed it, their video corrupted or something. It was surreal. But then the thing that was really trippy was after they finished dumping these ashes, then out of nowhere, an eagle comes and does 3 circles. We live in Australia. The part of Australia where there's no eagle. I don't even know if there's eagles in Australia, to be honest. But the part where eagles aren't a thing, right? They're not that big thing anyway, especially at a local beach. And then the eagle comes and does 3 loops around where we're just dumping the ashes and then flies off into the sunset. And ever since this day, I was like, okay, there was something spiritual there. We thought that the eagle was Titty because he said that his whole life, if he ever comes back, he wants to be reincarnated as an eagle. Now, look, I don't know if I believe in reincarnation or anything. I don't know what the Bible says about it, if I'm being completely honest. But that was the start where I sort of sparked my curiosity into the spiritual realm, because that wasn't natural. That was supernatural. And then I kept going. I went through my life. I started sort of learning about meditation a little bit. And then I remember I did this one meditation where I was trying to unlock my third eye. That was a big thing for me. I was always trying to, the third eye was a big thing. The pineal gland. You got to try and unlock that. So I was doing this meditation in the office, right? And in the office, I had it closed. We had like a door which shut off. So it was completely dark. And then I'm doing this meditation. And then my dad comes in and flicks the light on. I'm like, and then he snaps me out of it. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And then I turn around. He's like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you're in here. So then I close my eyes and I'm meditating. And then as I'm doing the third eye meditation from YouTube, I'm doing it again. And then out of nowhere, just, you know how when you close your eyes, it's black? When I closed my eyes, it was completely white. After I was meditating for maybe like another 5 minutes doing this thing. And then I opened my eyes because I thought my dad had came in and turned the light on again. I'm like, what are you doing? And the room was pitch black. So I don't know what just happened, but something I just saw where it was completely white. It was the purest white I've ever seen in my life. And ever since then, I was like, whoa, I think maybe did I unlock my third eye? I have no idea. But that was the start. And then, so I kept doing more and more of these things. I kept trying to do like astral projection, and I could kind of get out of my body and like look at myself coming down. That was really cool. My senses became heightened. And there's a reason I'm telling you this, and I'm talking about my testimony with Jesus, because I'm sure a lot of you are going through this similar thing where you're trying to find answers, and you probably think that the whole meditation aspect is a really good idea. Like, bro, let's meditate. Oh, it helps you become calm. It helps you become calm. You got to love yourself, look after yourself, all these certain things, which is what I was saying. I looked at it as a place of meditation was really good for you, and you should be meditating because that's what the world tells you, right? Well, at least, and this form of meditation was good for you because I'm knowing more about myself. And it is to an extent, but you're playing a very risky game doing stuff like this because you're entering into the spiritual realm illegally. And this is something I didn't really understand until recently, now that I've come to the faith. But when you go into the spiritual realm, there's certain areas of it which you're allowed to go in, which God gives you access to. Then there's other areas which you aren't technically allowed to go. And when you go into those areas, then you don't even realize, but you're signing a contract with the devil, with the demons, and you're allowing those demons, you're opening yourself up so these demons can live inside of you. And this, you probably won't even notice it, but they'll start affecting your life bit by bit by bit. And I'll touch on this when I talk about my deliverance, but they can start representing in things like you can start becoming angrier because the spirit of anger could start living in you. You could start developing pains because sometimes they actually manifest as pain. Like me, it was sort of in my throat as well. Like I had this lump in my throat. Some people get back pains, get hip pains, foot pains. If you get it in random spots, there's a chance it could possibly be a demon living in that spot, which needs to be cast out. And I know this sounds like heebie-jeebie. If you would have said to younger Jack, bro, you got to cast out demons, I would have said, bro, stop watching movies. But this is real. This is very, very real. Anyway, for context, I came across this thing called the CIA Gateway tapes basically there was this declassified document, and this declassified document from the CIA, which outlined these tapes which they had made, which you can put on, and what it does is it shuts off one side of your brain, so the logical side of your brain, and opens up and awakes the creative side of your brain. Because you know how you've got the left hemisphere, right hemisphere? So basically it plays these frequencies in your ears, and then what happens is your brain hears the difference between them. And then they guide you through these different meditations, and you reach this certain state. And the CIA was using it for spiritual warfare. So they wanted to be able to astral project and go into to attack their enemies. But it ended up not working because you can't go into this space without a pure heart. So if you're going in trying to attack someone, you can't go into the spiritual realm legally, and you end up getting a bunch of demons in you, and you end up losing your mind, basically. So I was doing this tape. Sounds like a good idea, right? With absolutely no guidance, just going and doing this just in my bedroom. Oh, Jack, what are you doing? Anyway, I'm doing this tape, and I thought it was really cool. I'm like uncovering more and more things. And then I start getting really, really deep into it, and I'm exploring the spiritual realm. I'm looking around, I'm floating around. And then it was so cool. And then out of nowhere, I get sucked up to this place, which at the time I was describing it as the source. And I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt this connection with everyone and everything at the same time. And I could see like all the little wires coming up, connecting into this one place. And at that moment, I realized that we're all one. Like, this is what I was thinking at the time, is we're all one. We're all connected to this source. But now that I realize, now I'm looking back, this source, which I was calling, was God. God had brought me up to him, and he had shown me the connection that how everybody was connected. Everybody was connected to God. But it's like some of us choose to not like break that connection for some reason. I don't understand it. But it was weird, right? And then I ended up coming out of the meditation, and I'm tripping. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? What did I just experience? Yeah, and then I ended up making my breakfast, whatever. And then I go lay down on my bed. And when I lay down on my bed, I just hear a voice that says, go for a walk. I'm like, well, I don't want to go for a walk. And then he's like, now. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go for a walk. And then I end up leaving my phone. I leave my Apple Watch. I leave everything at home, right? And I can't remember the last time I left the house without my electronics. And anyway, I leave the house without my electronics. I go for a walk. And this walk was insane. I felt like I was high, but I was completely sober. I end up like going up to a piece of grass, like the grass field, and then I touched the grass, and I felt the entire field from touching this one bit of the grass. I go and I touch a leaf, and I felt the whole tree. I don't know how to describe this. But I'd go and I'd feel all of the wind on my face like heightened times 10. And then God was like guiding me to go into all these weird places. I'm sure if anyone looking at me, they would have been like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, why is he walking in the bushes and stuff like this? And then he was guiding me to all these things. And then he guides me, he says, go to the water. I'm like, I don't want to go to the water. It's dirty. It's gross. It's a creek. I don't want to go to the dirty creek water. He's like, go there now. And I'm like, all right, man, I'll go to the water. And then I walk up, and I see the water, there's a stream, and the water is hitting this rock, and it's hitting the rock, and then it's creating this ripple effect. And I remember when I looked at this rock, I thought it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. For some reason, not the rock, sorry, the water. When I looked at the water, I thought it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And then in that moment, God said to me, he said, water is the answer. And then I said, what do you mean? And then he goes quiet. He stops talking to me after that. I'm like, bro, what is this? And at the time, then I went and looked it all up, and I was trying to understand all about, and then my whole walk, I was thinking, what does this mean? Water is the answer. Well, like, how does that relate to any of this? And I go look it up, and I couldn't really get an answer. And it wasn't until literally like a month ago. We're now in March. This happened in November, maybe like the month before November, October. But I finally got an answer about a month ago. Just from reading the Bible and speaking to other Christians, I found out that this was trippy. He said, before I even came to Christ, said water is the answer. And I looked at what they said to me was, Jesus is the living water. So even before I came to Christ, God was literally telling me that Jesus is the answer. Water is the answer. Jesus is the living water. So I thought that was surreal, that he was speaking to me even before I came to him. And what I realized now that I've came to Christ is that God never abandoned me. I kept abandoning him, and I kept not acknowledging him. I kept calling him the universe, and I'm getting all these signs and I'm getting all these things, but it was him. He was there looking out for me the whole time, and I was disrespecting him, I guess. I was just like not acknowledging him and not appreciating him. But yeah, that's how merciful he is. Anyway, so I have this walk and I'm tripping. I'm like, well, this is crazy. A couple weeks go by, and then it's right before November. Okay, and here's where I'm going to talk about the hub addiction. Right now, a lot of people don't speak about these things because there's a lot of shame involved with it. But I think it's a topic which needs to be spoken about because Satan operates in the darkness. If you speak about it, you can fix the problem. If you keep not telling anyone about the problem, you'll never fix the problem. So I hope this is a wake-up call for you. I'm going to be personal and real and honest and authentic with you guys right now. And I pray that you guys can do the same. Just share it with people. You don't need to live in darkness. Come to the light. So with me in grade 5, I remember I went to one of my friends' houses. And at this stage, I never went on the hub before in my life. I never knew anything about it. But I ended up going to his house. His parents weren't home. And then he says, "Oh, bro, do you want to go in my room here? Look, I want to show you something." I'm like, what? What do you want to show me, bro? And then I was more like, "Oh, what? What do you want to show me?" Because my voice is really high. And then I go in his room, and then he pulls up the hub and he shows me my first ever video. And I'm like, whoa, ever since then, I was hooked. The spirit of lust jumped into me like in that moment, and it stayed with me. It stayed with me I'm 23 years old, and I've had it ever since grade 5, where it's just like I could never stop with self-pleasure. I could never stop. It's like every time I try and stop for like, a couple days, a week, whatever, I would always revert back. I'd always try and do No Not November, and I could do like maybe a week, whatever, and I'd always revert back. I was always stuck with this addiction, right? I always wanted to do no fat, but I could never do it, right? And every time I always tried to do it for November, especially because, No Not November, whatever. But I could never do it. And then the reason I'm telling you this is because one of my Christian friends, remember, I haven't came to Christ yet. One of my Christian friends ended up sending me a video that basically explains the importance of semen retention. And the importance of, as a man, how that is literally your source of energy, your source of power. And by nutting all the time, you're literally depleting your masculine essence. God has given you this gift. He's given you this gift of masculinity. He's given you this gift of semen, of being able to create life with this thing in your body, but we're just getting taught in society through everything to keep releasing this spirit. This stuff which our body produces, which is a source of energy. And it's the most powerful source of energy, because think about how much energy you have when you're horny, bro. How much can you do? You could literally break walls. You could do anything when you're in that state. That is the most powerful source of energy, which needs to be harnessed. But instead of harnessing it, we're releasing it. And pressure makes diamonds. So if you can suppress that pressure and learn to harness it, then you can change your life. So I watched this video, and literally the very next day after watching this, and I guess once I put importance on it and I realized the value of this thing which I have, then literally like that, I just stopped. And it's now March of 2025, so it's been 5 months or something. How long has it been since November? Wow, it's been 5 months. 5 months, and I haven't went on the hub at all. I haven't done any of that, and I've just been completely free from it. So God was breaking chains in me before I even came to him. This was maybe like a month before I came to him, right? So I thought that was surreal, and it's something which, yeah, I'll make more videos on in depth to talk about it. But yeah, sexual immorality is a very big sin, which you should really look into and consider. So that was that. Now I'm going to move into the next part. Now it's so it started with the CIA gateway tapes, and then God broke me free from the hub addiction. And then now this is when he starts to sort of bring me closer. This is when he brings me into the church. So it started with a girl, right? It always starts with a girl. So I had recently broken up with my ex, and I had said, no girls. I don't want any girls. I don't want anything. I just want to focus on me. And this was maybe like 2 months. I broke up with my girl maybe 2 months before my ex, 2 months before this. And I was just focused. I wanted to focus on me for like a year, right? Just a jack year. Then I put something on my story which says, we're not our physical bodies, because if we were our physical bodies, then how come our body stays here when we die? It doesn't make any sense. We're obviously the spirit inside of our body. This is just a tool that we use to interact with the world. We're the thing inside. We're the thing inside in our heart. And then this girl who was one of my friends from a while ago ends up replying to my story and says, what do you mean by this? And then we have a long conversation, and then I ended up telling her about the CIA gateway tapes somehow. And she's telling me about sort of Christianity and all these things. And just by the end of it, I felt this feeling I had never felt before speaking to any other girl. I felt this feeling of like loved, but it's like my mind and my spirit was loved. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like I felt this warm feeling. It was more than just like, this chick's cool. It was like, yo, this chick is sick, you know? But I was like, no, Jack, yo, not going to do anything. Then literally the very next day, I get called into work. Jack, you need to come into work because the other guy who's working, he needs to fly to Western Australia because his daughter just got in a car accident. She just got hit by a concrete truck. I'm like, oh no. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll be there. Like, definitely. So I end up going into work, and then I have to work the whole week. I was just working casual at this point. But I need to go and I work the whole week. And then I find out that the person who got in the car accident, her name was Rachel. And the reason why this is trippy is because the girl I'm talking to, her name's Rachel. So the next day, I get called into work because Rachel gets in a car accident. I'm like, okay, this could be a coincidence. Like, who knows, blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, her full name is Rachel Fuentes. The reason I said her full name is because the boys end up adding me into the group chat because I made some controversial video, and then they ended up changing my name in the group chat to Jack Fuentes. They don't know anything about this girl. They don't know anything about her, and I've sort of sussing her out. And then just out of nowhere, major coincidence, they could have named me anything in the group chat, but they set my name to Jack Fuentes. So I've had 2 signs so far saying, go for this girl, Rachel. She's pretty cool. So first sign is I get called into work because Rachel gets hit by a concrete truck. She's okay now. Thank God. And then the second sign is the boys set my name to my name and the last name of this girl I'm talking to. Then Rachel says, hey, do you want to come to church with me on Sunday? I've never really been to a proper church. I've never been to an alive church. There's a big difference between a dead church and an alive church. But I've never really been to an alive church before. I haven't been to church that much at all. But I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll give it a try. I'm open to new things. And then so I end up rocking up on Sunday and I meet her mum. And this is when it gets really trippy. So I have an auntie called Auntie Rachel who passed away when I was like 2 years old. I never really got to know her properly. And then my nana, so Auntie Rachel's mum's name, so my nana, her name's Jessie. Now here's where it gets really trippy, is when I go to church, I meet Rachel's, the girl I'm talking to's mum, and her name's also Jessie. I'm like, okay, this is a third sign. And then on top of that, God throws a fourth sign on top of it because Jessie's birthday is on the same day as my Auntie Rachel. So I'm like, whoa, this is insane. So to get me to the church, God gave me 4 signs. He gave me 4 signs to get me in the door. First, concrete truck. Second, setting my name to Jack Fuentes. Third, her mum's name is the same name as my nana, and her name is the same name as my auntie. And then her mum's birthday is the same birthday as my Auntie Rachel. I'm like, okay, this is surreal, okay? And then I walk through the door, and here's when I felt God's presence. As soon as I walked through the door and I walked through the curtains, then they were like, hey, I could feel the energy. It was really cool. If you've ever been to an alive church, you'll know this loving feeling I'm talking about. And then basically they say at the front, they're like, oh, Steve or whoever it was at the front and like, he's gone through a rough time. Let's all reach out our hands and pray for him. So everybody, maybe 50 people reach out their hands in the church. And then they're just like, we just want to pray for Steve right now. We bring you. And I just felt the love in the room. Everybody, you could feel the energy shift just like that. I'm like, whoa, what is this? This is surreal. And then the service goes on. I'm like really listening intently. I can't remember what the message was. But then at the end, they're like, okay, we're going to do worship, which is just like playing the music, but feel free to come to the front. If you want to come to the front and worship, come to the front. And me, I like doing things, like putting myself into the situation fully. So I'm like to Rachel, I'm like, hey, do you want to go to the front? And she's like, oh, what, really? I'm like, yeah, let's go. So then I end up going to the front. And when I step in this bit at the front, I just felt this different energy around me, which I've never felt before. And then, I felt this strange energy. And then she's like, do you want me to pray for you? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. And then she puts her hand on my shoulder. She starts praying for me and I start feeling weird in my body. I don't know how to describe it. And then the pastor comes up to me, Pastor Rocky comes up to me, puts his hand on my forehead, and then he starts praying for me, and I instantly go into a trance. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just like listening intently, and I'm just like, whoa, this is cool. And then they put their hand on my chest, and Rachel puts her hand on my back. They're praying for me for a couple minutes, and after they stop praying, then I'm just filled with this feeling in my chest, which is warm and cold at the same time, and I'm just like filled with so much love, and I was holding back tears for like 2 hours after this. I'm like, what is this? This is incredible. And then I sit down on the seat and they're like, they say the announcements, and one of them was, we're doing baptisms on December 15th, 2024. Just want to put the date in document so I don't forget the date. Yeah, we're doing baptisms December 15th, 2024. And I was like, yep, sign me up. At the end, I went and spoke to the pastor. I said, put me on the list. I'm doing it. So literally one visit to the church, I gave my life to Jesus in that one visit. And then I was like, wow, I need to know more about this. When I'm interested in something, I get obsessed on it. I get obsessed until I know as much about it as possible. So then I keep going to church, right? And here's where it starts sort of picking up. God starts speaking to me even more. So I end up going to church the next week, and then a few things happen. I can't really properly remember. And then I go to church the week after. And when I go to church this time, I was wearing glasses because my eyes have always been really bad. But I was wearing glasses, and I ended up looking at the lady who was speaking, and I could see her aura around her. Now, in my childhood, I've sort of seen auras a bit before, but never as bright as this. This was a really bright aura. I could just see the energy around her. And then as I'm looking, God says to me, take off your glasses. And I'm like, what? I don't want to take off my glasses. I'm so defiant. And then he's like, now. I'm like, all right, fine. So I take off my glasses, and the aura gets bigger. I get so much bigger, and I see it on like 2 or 3 other people. And I'm just, but he doesn't speak to me at all after that. All he said was take off your glasses. And then I'm sort of thinking about it. I tell Rachel about it. I'm like, this is surreal. And then I end up driving home. And as I'm walking to the front door of my house, God stops me and he speaks so clearly. And he says, my child, the eyes I have given you are perfect. You can see exactly what I need you to see. And I was like, whoa, is there anyone around? Who was that? It was like, this is insane. And then ever since then, I haven't worn glasses, and my vision, it's not perfect now. I'm going to be completely transparent. It's not perfect, but my vision has improved significantly since then. And I haven't worn my glasses like barely. I don't really wear my glasses at all anymore. And they used to be really bad. So this happened before I came to it, right? Then my friend, the one who sent me, so this is the glasses story. Then this is when it gets trippy. This is when I start talking about when the demons came out of my body. So it starts with my friend. He's like, bro, so he's a part of this online fellowship, which they basically are evangelists, and they cast out demons all around Australia. This part is surreal. So he basically says to me, hey, bro, before your baptism, let's do a repentance. I said, what's that? And he said, basically what we're going to do, and this is what they did, we sat down on video call with him and another one of the people from the fellowship. Shout out Villa and Bo. But then what they do is they end up sitting me down and go through all of my go through. Basically, I told them everything about my life and all the bad things that had happened. And they basically, it went for like an hour, 2 hours, this meeting, right? We went really in depth. And then what happened is Villa ended up making me a 19-page document where he wrote down all of the spirits, all of the demonic spirits which could have attached themselves onto me throughout my life. And then what I needed to do was, in my own time the next day, I needed to go and read this out loud and basically repent for all of these spirits, which is basically breaking that contract which I had gone in. And I had no idea how any of this worked, but basically throughout your life, every time you do something bad, or you got scared, or you were angry, or you were jealous, or you were bitter, or you were something, then you've basically opened yourself up for these demons to jump and live inside of you. And unless you cast them out, then they stay in there. They stay in there for your entire life. And they keep bringing you down. They keep bringing you down, and it's so heavy, right? So I end up doing this. I read this document. It takes me maybe an hour to read this document. I just do it by myself. I park up my car somewhere the next day, and I just read it out loud, and I could feel it. I could feel this energy. And then after, I close my eyes, and I'm like, ah, and I just scream for like 5 minutes. And yeah, after I do this, I scream for maybe 5 minutes, and then I thought that was it. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I tell Bo, I'm like, oh, this is sick. Like, thank you, man, for making me do this. And then I was getting baptized on the Sunday. On the Friday, he's like, bro, hop on a call tonight. Let's do a deliverance. I'm like, what? What's a deliverance? He said, trust me, bro, it'll change your life. I'm like, what? Like, give me more details, man. What is this? I'm like, he said, trust me. I said, okay. So I end up hopping on this call, and they start praying for me, and they start praying to... Before I tell you the story, I'm going to give you a rundown as to what a deliverance is. A deliverance is when when someone is being delivered from demonic spirits. So basically what happened is I sit down on the bed, and this is how powerful the Holy Spirit is. This is just through a video call on my phone. This is how powerful it is. So I end up sitting down on my bed, and I just have my phone here, my AirPods in, and they start praying for me. And then out of nowhere, I'm like, these guys are insane. Like, well, nothing is going to happen. And like I said, I'd done no research on deliverance at all. I had no preconceived ideas of anything. Then out of nowhere, my hands start moving. I'm like, what is this? This is insane. And then they keep praying, and they're saying certain things. And then I start smashing my bed, and I'm like banging. I'm going side to side. I'm like, my whole body has been taken over. I had no control. And then literally out of nowhere, like my legs fling up in the air, my arms go forward, and I get folded in like a V shape. And then I go back, and my head's on the thing, and my stomach is thrusted into the air. And I'm like, whoa, I wasn't floating or anything. It's just like my feet were down on the ground, and then my body was like this. So I was like literally in like a U shape with my body, and I just kept going back and forth. I was growling, I was doing all these things. And then I remember when he said for the spirit of lust to leave your body. And then I started smashing my head on either side of the pillow, and I'm like, I'm growling, I'm doing all these things. And this went for like an hour, man. Imagine taking a back seat in your body, your own body, for an hour. Maybe it was even longer than an hour. I have no idea. But this was insane. And then after it, I remember, while it's happening as well, I remember I feel this feeling in my hands where it's like all tingling in my hands. And I just felt it went from my hands down to my forearms and a little bit of my bicep. And it was just like surging with pure like power and energy as all this is happening. So I've never felt like this before. And then my eyes were closed, and then it was dark. And then again, the same thing happened back then when I opened my pineal gland or whatever that was, my third eye. Then the same thing happened where it was black, and it went pure white. It just went like literally pure white for maybe 10 seconds as this was happening. And I'm just feeling all this attack happening and all this stuff leaving my body. After they stopped praying, they're like, Jack, how do you feel? And I'm just like in shock. I'm like, oh, and I'm just giggling. I'm like, I'm just like, I had no idea what to say. And I was still I was in shock. And then they said, I feel good. And then all I could feel was I felt lighter. I felt so physically light is the only way I can describe it. And then they're like, okay, we're going to try one more thing. And I'm like, okay, another thing. Like, bro, I don't know if I can handle any more of this. And then they're like, okay. So then he says, so I grab the phone. I'm like this. And then he says, okay, look at me in the eyes. I'm like, okay. And then he says, any spirits in Jack, what's your name? What's your name? And I'm thinking this guy's insane. I'm like, I'm not just going to say something. I'm not just going to make up words. He's like, what's your name? This goes for maybe 30 seconds, a minute. And then out of nowhere, then my mouth starts moving. And I'm like, Anna. And then I say Anna. I say anger, but now in hindsight, I know what I was saying was anger. But then they kept saying, the spirit of Anna, leave Jack's body right now. And then I growled deeper than I've ever growled before in my life. I start smashing and I'm going insane. Yeah, and then it ended. And then what they said is that in the next 48 hours, you're going to get spiritually attacked. So be careful. And I'm like, okay, so this is in the back of my mind. And then and then after this whole thing happens, we end the call. I'm like, whoa, my whole life got changed in that moment. And meanwhile, I'm in the house with other people, my family's in the house, and they have no idea what has just happened. They're just watching their show. And I don't tell any of them because they're not religious. So I'm sort of just like by myself. And then I end up going in the shower and I have a shower after it. And I just I don't know, I start like speaking in tongues but I wasn't just speaking in tongues. Then I started like singing in tongues, this thing which sounded like Arabic. I was like, I don't even know what I was saying. I have no idea. But when I was singing this song, it felt like my whole body was purified and my whole body was cleansed in this moment. And then I'm like, okay. And then I was so scared to go to sleep, but I ended up going to sleep. And then the next day, Rachel's niece ends up having a birthday party, had a birthday party, which I was invited to. So this is on the Saturday, and then has a birthday party at some play center or something. So I was going to that. And in the morning, God had told me that I needed to fast. And I had no idea what the point of fasting was. No one's ever really told me about fasting before, but I just had a feeling that I needed to fast. Food. I could have water, but I just needed to fast food. And then, so I end up driving the next morning. I end up driving to the play center to see Rachel and the niece and everything. And literally as soon as I pull into the parking lot, as soon as I pull into there, I get a call from Rachel saying, Jack, my heart, Jack, like I'm having really bad chest pains right now. Jack, I don't know what's happening. And then I rush inside to go see her, and her whole chest has gone numb. Her whole face has gone numb, and she's freaking out. We need to call the ambulance and everything. And then everyone's around her because her family is very spiritual. They start praying, and when they start praying for her, the feelings start going down. I'm like, whoa. I was like, this is definitely a spiritual attack. It's no coincidence that she has this really bad heart pain the very next day after I get all these demons cast out of me. Maybe they're jumping off of me and they're landing onto her to scare me. Because what I've realized now after experiencing a few other people get delivered is that what happens is the biggest thing is after a deliverance is they try and scare you in. That's a really common thing is they try and scare you. So I feel like the reason for this was to invoke fear. But I didn't allow it to scare me. I just made my faith even stronger. I just kept praying and like intensely. And then, I end up I'm with her the whole day. We're in the hospital and everything. And then I end up going back home, and then I'm reading the Bible, reading so much of the Bible. And then, I'm reading the Bible, and then I get up to go to the toilet. And when I go to the toilet, then all the walls around me start becoming distorted. When you're drunk and it's just everything's trippy. I was completely sober, but everything around me started becoming distorted for 5-10 seconds. I'm like, whoa, I didn't think much of it, right? And then I end up going in my room, read the Bible a bit more, and then I get up to change into my pajamas. And then I was wearing a cross necklace at the time. And then I lightly touched it. I touched it literally like that. And when I touched it like that, my necklace snapped and the cross fell on the ground. And then when that happened, I was like, whoa, okay, the demons are trying to attack me. And so instead of getting scared, I picked up the cross and I just started praying in tongues, like aggressively praying in tongues. And I could feel the spirits around me, how much they hated that. They hated it. They were trying to scare me, but it didn't work. And then I kept praying, and then I ended up going to sleep. And then the very next day was my baptism. So I ended up going to the baptism, and it was just such a beautiful, wholesome day. And then I remember going into the water, and when I get dunked in the water and I come up, it's like everything just got brighter. All the colors got more vibrant, just like everything just felt more loving. I don't know how to describe it, but it was surreal, and my whole world changed since that day. And then I just went up to everyone and I was just like giving them a really long hug and telling them how much I love them. And then, yeah, ever since then, God's has been using me ever since then as his vessel to bring more and more people to him. And now he's told me now to redo this podcast and use this podcast to spread the message and to help bring more people to Christ. So that's going to be the emphasis of this podcast. So yeah, that's my testimony. As you can see, it's pretty long, so I couldn't really fit it in a TikTok or a reel. I'll probably chop up a few clips from this and put it in a reel and stuff. But yeah, my whole life has changed ever since that day. Well, this whole last couple months, God's just been edifying me and just bringing me closer and closer to him. And now I'll start wrapping up, and I guess to sort of conclude this is I'll talk about my sort of biggest lessons, the biggest takeaways that I've got from this whole experience is that the more I submit to God, the better my life becomes in every aspect. As you heard before, when God would speak to me, I would be defiant and I would say, no, like, oh, I can't be bothered, can't, whatever. Every time that I did it anyway, my life changed. God's will for you is 10 quadrillion times greater than your will for yourself. He sees the whole picture. Just submit to him. One of my good friends, Tony, said to me, submission is submitting to the mission. And that's been the biggest thing as to how I've gotten closer and stronger and stronger and stronger in my faith. And I'm going to keep remaining to get stronger. And I just want God to keep using me, because what else matters? In the grand scheme of things, what else matters? It's, yeah, we go and we make a bunch of money. Then what? What happens when you die? Nothing. We go and we try and have all these objects and everything, and then what? What happens when they break? Then what? You can't put your faith in things of this world, because this world is corrupt. Ever since Adam and Eve, the world has become corrupt because sin has entered the world. So now what I've realized is my biggest lesson since my baptism is that because I've literally been born again, that's the whole point of the baptism process, is to be born again. You're basically, you're putting your flesh to death and you're being born as a new spirit. As a person who lives in the world, you're always going to sin because sin entered the world through Adam and Eve. You don't have to teach a baby how to be bad. What happens if you go up to a kid and say, did you eat that candy? What are they going to say? They're going to say no. Who taught the kid how to lie? Who taught the kids how to get into fights? Who taught the kids how to scream? Who taught the kids how to be bad? No one has to teach them things, because their nature by default is we are sinful. So that's why God, through Christ came and he died on the cross for us to now allow us to put that flesh to death. So that way we can all be saved of our sins. All we need to do is just keep submitting to him. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to finish it with an analogy, which I love this analogy. So within all of us, there's a black wolf and a white wolf. The black wolf represents all of our sin and darkness and everything which lives within us. The white wolf represents righteousness, purity, and the spirit which lives within us. Which spirit is stronger? Someone asked me this and I was thinking, I was like, I have no idea. Which one is it? I was like, oh, the white wolf. And then he just replies to me and he's like, the one you feed. So if you keep feeding the black wolf, it's going to be stronger. It's going to keep growing. If you keep knowing things are bad and you keep doing them anyway, you're making that wolf stronger and stronger and stronger. If you've been baptized and if you've been baptized in the Holy Spirit and in water, then you have the power of the Spirit within you, so you don't need to do these things. You are a completely different being. You have a different nature, but that nature will never thrive and will never grow unless you're feeding it with the word, with prayer, with service, with submitting to God, with all of these things, with good deeds, with literally anything which is good, which is righteous, will help the Spirit grow, and then your whole life will start changing. You won't feel anxious. You won't feel depressed. You won't give in to lust. You won't be greedy. You won't idolize people. There's so many sins which we're doing which we don't even realize. But one of the biggest things I've realized since I've came to Christ is that because of the nature change, the bad things which I knew were bad but felt good before now actually feel bad. Like if I go and do something, for example, swearing. I used to swear, but I didn't really care. I used to swear so much. But now God has delivered me of my foul mouth. I might slip up every now and then, but it's rare. It's incredibly rare. Because it's whenever I hear swearing now, it feels like an attack on my spirit. It's just like I've now been convicted of this, where it's just like it feels wrong. And same with like any type of sexual immorality. If there's any thoughts or any lust, anything comes up on Instagram, it just makes me feel wrong in my spirit. And yeah, if you're, I guess I'm just going to finish this by saying that if you're struggling with a few things, if you're struggling with anything, anxiety, depression, lust, covetousness, if you're looking at people and you're saying, I wish I had what they had, or you're struggling with anything, and Jesus Christ died for you. Jesus Christ died for all of us to set us free from all of our sins. Just give it a try. You've tried not believing in him. Why don't you try believing in him? What have you got to lose? You have everything to gain and literally nothing to lose. Just try going to church. Try reading the Bible. You know, try praying, saying, God, if you're real, show me a sign. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. There's going to be plenty more episodes. This has just been my story. I don't know where this is going to take me. I'm going to let God keep guiding me. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. And yeah, this has been the Desirable Podcast. My name is Jack Desira. You can find me on all socials at Jack Desira. And you can find this podcast at thedesirable.au on Instagram and TikTok, or at The Desirable Podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called. But yeah. Okay, anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in for this first episode, and I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye.